Hello. Thank you everyone for joining another portion of the California Art Club's Collectors Comments. I'm Suzanne Bellah. I'm former director curator of the Carnegie Art Museum in Oxnard. And in that capacity for over 25 years, I was involved in acquiring art to build a permanent collection, primarily focused on California art. While the museum's collection reflects a wide range of California art styles from representational to non-representational, the realistic fine art tradition has always remained a core focus of that collection that I was able to participate in. It was due to the fact that California Plein Air launched the museum collection in the 1920s. With artists like Paula Ritz and Catherine Layton included. Over the past several decades, I've been delighted to collaborate with the California Art Club and individually with a number of its artist members on about 27 major exhibitions and solo exhibits. During this period, the museum collection was strengthened with several acquisitions of traditional fine art and drawings, paintings by contemporary signature artists and of the California Art Club, like Franklin Arts, Daniel Pinkham, Dolores Pedersen, Alexi Steele, and Peter Adams. So naturally, I was honored and very excited to be invited by the club to share some highlights on collecting upon the occasion of this 109th annual gold medal exhibition. So out of the absolute wealth of the full show of the 109th annual gold medal exhibition, I'd like to invite you all to look with me at about 15 works. It's about 10% of the show, and believe me, it was hard to hold myself back just to that amount. These are works that just stood out to me. They grabbed my attention for their visual appeal, their mental appeal, or their social historical appeal, or even better, a combination of those. So before we start, particularly for the budding collector, I thought I might share a few collecting tips or criterion that I have kept in mind when considering acquiring a work. It might be of help to you. The overall mantra I learned in the first couple of days of being an intern in the 1980s at the Walters Art Gallery, now called Walters Museum in Baltimore, Maryland. A dapper staff member got into the elevator with me. It was a brief ride, and when he was leaving quickly, he turned around and spontaneously advised me out of the blue. He said, whether for an institution or a home, don't buy any artwork unless you love it. So that's become a mantra. And unbeknownst to me, that gentleman was the former director of the Walters Art Gallery from 1965 to 1981, Richard Crandall. He's an incredible medieval art specialist. And during his tenure at the museum, he tripled the size of the Walters. So much for dumb luck. So there we see it. With his words, collecting art, let's face it, it has a very strong subjective element. And I unabashedly agree. You have to buy something that you love. But if you're considering collecting an artwork to have long-term, it is best to temper that subjective impulse with a few criterion. This will ensure that every day you wake up, you'll enjoy the excellence and the growing depths you see and find in your painting, drawing, pastel, or sculpture. A few of these criterion are first, and this is number one for me, is to have a work of excellent technique and craftsmanship. Fortunately, the art selected for the gold medal show goes through rigorous jurying and is by artists who have had to meet very high standards to win the right to be an artist or a signature artist member of the club. So collecting art from the gold medal show gives one a very strong baseline of quality. Now, along with great technique enhancing the aesthetics of an artwork, great craftsmanship is extremely important, as it ensures that the longevity of the artwork will be there and avoids a lot of pricey conservation work down the road. Another criterion is I like to see an artwork have some aspect of creativity. Is there a new theme in the work, a new twist, a new take on a genre, or a creative viewpoint that makes the artwork stand out visually or strongly, more than other works, engage the viewer? Another criterion I like is multiple layers of value. Does the artwork incorporate several layers of meaning, or is it just a one-liner? Does it have an impactful aesthetic value? Does it include social references, or have a future historical value, like so many of the early California plein air paintings of our landscapes? Those landscapes are gone. So they've saved the beauty for us. And it shows a historical trend. Perhaps the work would have a biographic or an autobiographical reference. It might include some irony, which is a personal favorite. Or perhaps it resonates with something in your own life experience. Like a great classic mystery novel, the more layers of meaning in a painting makes that work more mentally stimulating for generations ahead. And finally, I find it interesting when one can, in collecting, to have a work that's some kind of indicator of the artist's career. Consider how the specific artwork reflects the artist's overall career to date. Or perhaps you're finding something that's an early example showing the artist's future promise, or an example of the artist in an apex of one of their series throughout their career. I also very much like finding work that's indicative of a turning point for the artist. Perhaps they're in the middle of switching to a new series, or taking a theme to a different target zone. Or, of course, we all like to find an artwork that's a mature triumph by the artist. So I hope these tips might be kept in mind when you're looking at art. And now I would like to share the works that I selected out of the show. And by the way, I've simply followed the alphabetical order that you see on the website. There is no hierarchy or under meaning in the sequence that I give you. Out of all the truly impressive artworks in the entire show of this year's gold medal exhibition, these ones that I've chosen simply riveted my attention more when looking at the full group. And for the purposes of a collector's comments, they were outstanding examples of some of the collecting criteria that I just shared with you. So let's look first at Mary Aslan's Becalmed. With Becalmed, Mary Aslan first grabs one's attention by contrasting the eye-squinting sunlight striking a white sail with surrounding pockets of shadow, which deepen into the receding background. Her remarkable color use and blending of pastel keeps our eyes engaged with a variety of visual textures. They're the textures, for instance, of that thick yet draping sail canvas, the wooden boards, delicate white gladiola petals, translucent glass floats, the soft strength of the rope, and the gleam of the vases. Clearly, the artist is at the zenith of her pastel technique, even giving us the glow of sunlight. Look at the bottom, where it comes right through the back of the sail. Compositionally creative, Aslan uses the zigzag of the rope and the diagonal sail folds to wind us up from the bottom to the background in order to leisurely look at all the details, ending in the very top of that glass bell, and to make sure we do not miss the floral still lifes in the painted vase. In fact, the light blue vase painted with a sailing scene transforms the whole work into a still life set within an applied landscape for me. It's almost as if the vase surface is not actually painted, but is reflecting the image of the seascape that is before it in the distance. As added layers of value, her choices of seafaring and fishing emblems refer autobiographically to crewing on her own father's sailboats, all of which magnifies the pun of her titling the painting Becalmed. It's a highly successful example of the artist's stated desire to lose herself in painting a compelling story. The next one that just utterly stopped me was Anna Rose Bain's Constance Reaching. Anna Rose Bain has created a stunning painting with Constance. To my eye, it's all about balance and grace with a layer of subtext making us wonder and ponder the beautiful dancer's state of mind while she's absorbed in flowing movement. With some dance background myself, way back when, it's such a pleasure, honestly, to see a painter that gets the stance, poise, and inherent motion unified so well. And then Anna Rose tops it off with a superb facial portrait. Here, Anna Rose technically hit the figurative mark, rendering Constance the dancer in a complex movement and a complex moment. Bravely, the dancer is shown from the side and rear at the same time, with the upper torso twisting to reveal the gorgeous outlines of her back. This is after we are drawn in by Constance's left elbow as her hand slightly holds up the sheer fabric on her hip. And at the same time, that raised sole of her foot at the bottom pops up her left hip. The counterbalance of pop up and twist comes to an end with her outreaching hand. You can feel the quiet movement. The counterbalance, the painter's challenging choice too of using quiet colors and limited values, as she says in her commentary. And I do hope if you're looking at the website, you read all the artists' commentaries and go to their own websites for more background. But she uses quiet colors and limited values. These are a little reminiscent to me of Andrew Wyeth. And these actually here harmonize the scene while heightening the focus on Constance, as does that dancer's placement right in front of that anchoring corner cabinet. The jars in the cabinet add another layer, a taste of a still life to the work, and Bain uses two light sources, adding an enlivening gleam to what could otherwise be a dark scene, and it subtly spotlights Constance's face and the torsos where movement is happening. And again, the double entendre of the painting's title brings extra creativity and mental engagement to the work, as it makes me, maybe you even, wonder, what is Constance reaching for? Next up, this is an artist I've admired for a long time, John Budishin, showing in Unincorporated 1972. It's a sumptuous example of his hallmark ability to simultaneously show a landscape's terrain as monumental and unassuming. It's not only a great mastery of technique, of quiet light, but also of years of Budishin, in my opinion, really just looking at the land. With strong familiarity of the desert towards Palm Springs, he shows us the majestic jut of the mountains coming right up from the flat plains of very humble ranch lands. The work also has a social, historical implication, as I am surmising from his comments that the area is most likely right across the freeway from the Morongo Casino in Cabazon. And there's quite a commentary there in land use of our times, that first it was incorporated and then this area was unincorporated. Next, let's look at David Dibble's The Busy Season. In the busy season, he marries his virtuosity with painting, color, and an understructure from his background in illustration to create a vibrant yet very poignant statement on the nobility and challenges of today's farming communities, all of which has become more timely during this pandemic. And this becomes one and parcel with the very close viewpoint for us, making us really smack into this vegetation we're looking at. This sort of connection by accident or purpose really magnifies the painting's value as a historical reference and social indicator. So we look at a seemingly casual net of autumn leaves that have fallen over a crop of ornamental pumpkin and corn. Still, these vegetables are still beautiful in their organic decay at the end of the autumn holiday season. Dibble goes beyond a still life to blow as he's brought out the fragility and sheen of the vegetation to mirror, as he says in his comments, the downsizing of family farms and the cycle of life. Next, let's look at a figurative work wonderfully done by Lonnie Emanuel. Lonnie Emanuel's growing series of young women and adolescents grappling with new emotions, social dynamics, and self-awareness shows an artist doubly gifted with the ability to sense a subject's transitional states and to succinctly capture it in paint. Known for using minimal backgrounds and a restricted four-color palette to produce very realistic, quite contemporary figures. In my way, Emanuel's focus on the sitter's clean-lined couture has created a particularly, even for Lonnie, spare, intriguing triumph. With the sharp contrast between black and a bit of white in the young woman's outfit softened by dimmed light, the painter makes clear that the girl believes her black garb, a little show of skin, and hefty boots cuts her a badass self-image, as we see on the sock if you missed it. But the truth of the girl's inner conflict with self-confidence, as I see the painting, is revealed by Emanuel in the girl's body language of hunched shoulders, slightly tucked in head, and not completely hardened gaze. This painting verifies that Lonnie has a right to, as her website says, half humorously, self-described title of fashion psychologist. Another work comes up that just grabbed me to the core. This is Esther Engelman's, I'm sorry to Esther if I'm butchering the name, but Esther Engelman's Blue Boat. This is a pastel. Esther Engelman's tranquil Irish landscape of the blue boat rivets one's attention by the pairing of that saturated blue pastel skiff at the center of soft colors of moss and wispy reeds. Engelman's superb draftsmanship and keen sense of what details to keep or to suppress exquisitely expresses the hidden beauties of a misty day on the water's edge. The green hills across the expanse suggest a destination. Maybe it's a hint, another layer of mystery. Has this boat just come, or is it about to go? And I'd like to show this work because Engelman's pastel proves that the power of an artwork does not lie in the size of its support or canvas, but in its thoughtful execution. In fact, a little plus to having to show this gold medal exhibit virtually is that size on the computer screen tends to be leveled. All the sizes are not monumental to your eye on the screen. Andrew Evison's Evening in Old Shanghai shows sure bold strokes of watercolor and brilliant hits of light. And this stops the viewer in their tracks, much like the reaction he speaks of in his comments of strolling upon the scene and being stopped in his tracks while visiting the old city. His skill at coaxing the reflective luminosity out of shadows of gray washes pulls the canal waters out of drabness. His implied circle of the golden bridge and warm green glow of a canal front window bathes the channel in twilight. You see a twilight wonder rather than dinge. Although inspired by British watercolorists, to my eye, trained a little more in California art, Evanson's mastery of the medium seems akin to and contemporizes the best boldness of the California style of watercolor started and so popular from the 1920s to the 1950s. Next we have Randy Gallegos, First Among Many. While Gallegos' First Among Many from his Hearts for Hardware series certainly succeeds at elevating the retro game, his attention to realism and fine detail just jettisons the verisimilitude of old master still lifes into our 21st century. His realism in the raised, for instance, at the bottom of the still life, the bottom shows the raised on-off switch. It also shows a smooth versus bumpy black plastic textures that gives this 1975 Atari Home Pong console, sold by Sears, a super iconic status. Who would think black plastic would look so wonderful? And the console sits atop a worn 1970s colored muscle car type set of racing stripes. In addition to superb technique, this painting is loaded with context for social, video, and manufacturing history. Gallegos has attained his goal of elevating his subject to transcend its source. And another contemporizing take we see is Danny Griego's Ramp Signal. It's really an excellent contemporization of a classic genre. Here, the classic concept of landscape is a pocket of colorful nature wedged in between what could be read as the hectic hardness of the cityscape. Yet in Griego's urban landscape, all is equally struck by a sunny, cheerful light. Street signs, a pinned-in tree, shrubs cascading down the freeway wall, the asphalt ramp, and the tightly parked cars on a side street are all sunnily, happily lit. The zoom of autos on the freeway and urban sidewalk clutter are presented with the same relish and excitement as those snippets of nature and the far-off vistas. Honestly, kudos to Griego for being inspired by the integration of landscape and urban setting, and for directing our gaze to ignore, well, rather, to direct our gaze to finding the ignored nooks where nature and steel meet, as he calls it. And these are items we pass by daily. Another standout to me is Derek Harrison's Lavender Light. Derek Harrison's Lavender Light should not be overlooked just for the sheer beauty of its bathing summer twilight and early moonrise. The striking young woman has a self-possessed poise and stands as if breathing in, fully absorbing into her being the lavender glow, which, living as I do near Santa Barbara, believe me, this is a very real phenomenon. The painter's composition inserts prickly cactus, also common to Santa Barbara hillsides, between the softness of tall grass and tall trees. Perhaps it's a nod to obstacles having to be overcome, even in a paradise. I have a little bit of inkling that with this painting, Harrison seems to be admirably maturing his work, using crisper detail and a more simplified composition that lend a tinge of surrealism to the quietude of his realism. The next amazing work is Ray Hunter's Simple Pleasures, done in watercolor. Simple Pleasures is a superior watercolor painting by Ray Hunter. It is rich in coloration and drips with nearly touchable textures from the wet rocks to the child's soft knitted cap. On another level, the shore pool is a feast of swirling patterns and eddies. Best of all, this is an autobiographical memory of Hunter's grandson's first visit to the beach. Without revealing the boy's facial expression, the painter perfectly captures the wonder of discovery that the child's body language of simply stooping down, fully mesmerized to touch the water. Lori Kiersey in Compadres shares an extremely gentle moment of tranquility between three horses. Her realism is so great, it makes one, and I don't say this often, because being a museum person, we want to protect all art, but it really makes one want to reach out and pet the horses' softly rendered coats. Her supple color gradations of the three horses' overlapping flanks from light to dark leads us from the foreground of the gray-green grasses back towards the clouds softening the sky. Surely the quiet majesty of the scene is attributable as much to the artist's devotion to horses as her extensive skill in painting, drawing, and illustration. Alexander Manoukian delivers another knockout with Acropora. It's a gorgeous painting, carefully designed, full of details, and with lots of social and historical relevance. I think you may or may not know that due to an extensive fashion career, Alexandra carefully makes the costumes to set a whole scene with the models. And she does an incredible amount, as I find many California Art Club artists do, a massive amount of research on the topics included in their works, on environment, nature, or the subject. Her recent works, the past several years, always have focused on strong women and the theme of nature decaying and being weakened by the forces of humans. Here, a young woman under the ocean fans herself out, overprotecting the ocean floor. She's strong, but a little in comparison to other paintings recently that I've seen by Alexandra. I personally sense a little vulnerability, a little slight apprehension, shall we say, in Acropora, who is the emblem here. So what's going on as she fans herself out over the ocean floor? The clue is in the title, Acropora. Acropora is a species of a polyp coral, which has several variants. And this is what builds the immense calcium carbonate structures that support the living skin of the reef. So now all should become a little more revealed. The young Acropora is not covered in jewels or tattoos, but various types of coral up and down her arm, in her hair, and we see some more in the upper left in the background. And also we see the sea life that is supported by the reef. I think the implication here is that nature, and particularly man, is holding the threat of endangerment in the palm of their hands of this young, emblematic, I'll call her divinity of the coral. That's my take. We'll hope that the ocean doesn't have to rely completely on the mercy of human beings, is my takeaway from her artwork. And I'd like to kind of wind up with looking at two wonderful sculptures that are included in the 109th Gold Medal exhibition. One that drew me in was Adam Matano's Rascal. It's bronze on a steel base. And I really, with the sculptures, ask viewers to, after going to the website of the club, do go to the sculptor's own website, because you get multiple views, and this of the artwork I'm discussing. But Adam's condor here is incredible for the 360 view. There, each time it becomes another live scene or of this wonderful creature, whether you're seeing it front, side. It's very much as if you can spin around the sculpture. Adam's work is also a great wind-up to our collecting comments, as it incorporates so many of the criteria. Rascal was initially inspired by a California condor named Dolly, who lives at the Los Angeles Zoo. According to the artist, Dolly broke her wing before she could fly, so she stays in the zoo office, actually interacting with humans. So with our criteria, if you would look, the chasing and details just doesn't stop in this artwork of the condor. The broken wing is become a wonderful part of the design. The plinth that it's on, I think, is wonderful. It would replicate a bird's perch. And the touches of color on the bronze just really pull the metal being into life, shall we say. Also, it brings up so many multiple meanings. Man versus nature interactions, the endangerment of the species, which has been so prominent with the condors in California. And finally, let's close with another great sculpture, Brittany Ryan's Little Swimmer. It's an aqua resin with oil paint. Brittany Ryan's Little Swimmer so aptly shows the inner and outer vulnerable awakening of a budding teenager, that it just has to be a part of the spotlight. It's from Ryan's series of sculptures that make us, certainly me, a little uncomfortable, because it makes you remember growing up and now the other end, starting to age, and all the wonderful surprises our bodies put us through in those cycles. Her series of sculptures, from which this comes, investigates the beauty and psychology of people in transition from childhood to adulthood, as we become socially aware of the judgment of others and finding our place within a social group. The sculptor shows them, as here, in one of the most revealing, not most looked forward to positions of wearing a bathing suit. Little Swimmer is wonderfully awkward. I am guessing that she's probably about at that preteen stage. She's entering the wonderful puberty, and I think her body language with the well, not even the downcasted head, but really kind of tucked in, hiding a bit into her shoulder, communicates to me, at least, that she's slightly mystified with what's going on physically, and shy and maybe a little frightened about what directions her body is going or not going. And definitely, like us all, she is very hesitant of showing her kind of ungainliness in public. in the suit. And don't forget to really savor the coloration that Ryan has put onto the piece. It's wonderfully muted with a touch of, maybe I want to say, a little bit of acidity. So it's an underscore to the form being awkward. I think it really brings out more of the emotion of the subject. And again, go to the artist's website after you've read everything on the California Art Club site, because Ryan has other views so you can get the 360 full effect of the sculpture. So in closing, I hope that these collector outlook comments of mine bring you a few new ways of viewing and approaching the adoption of an art gem for yourself or for your family or business setting. Do increase your collecting knowledge by following the artist's careers. I would suggest email them if you have a question. Even, I believe, wonderfully planned by the club is hearing on the website and seeing the artists themselves giving studio tours as a part of the excitement of the gold medal exhibition. And I hope that this session, and again, I thank you for listening to all my words, makes you crave the return of seeing works of art in person as much as I crave it. This is something that I personally rather took for granted in the past. And with the new awakenings from the pandemic, I certainly won't in the future. Wrapping up, I'd wish to really express appreciation to all the gold medal artists for your diligence, your talent, and daily commitment to make such awe-inspiring fine art. Ironically, due to the pandemic, you might be, for better or worse, included in a landmark gold medal exhibition that will likely go down in the records as the club's first virtual exhibit. And also, I would like to send many thanks to the successful efforts taken by the California Art Club staff and board to not mix the 109th gold medal exhibit, but to explore the virtual presentation format and making it experimental and as multifaceted as possible in a lightning fast time frame. Everyone take very good care, and thank you.